Welcome to All Computery Tutorials. Today's topic is for loops. Last time we got into a basic introduction to loops, and today I'd like to talk more about for loops specifically. They're probably the most common kind of loop, at least they're the kind of loop that I use the most often. And they're called for loops because they allow you to iterate for a certain range or for a certain set of numbers, and to do something with each of those numbers or use each of those numbers as an index or a reference to something else. So let's talk about the different parts. The first thing is a declaration, and that starts off with for, since that's the name of the loop. And then right away we get into a variable declaration. And this looks a lot like a variable declaration you'd have anywhere else in your program, which could just be int k equals 15, and that's it. This variable lives for the scope of the loop, so as long as the loop is running, this variable exists. As soon as the variable is done, this ceases to exist. So if I want to create another for loop, I can use I again, and there are no problems with that at all, which is kind of nice, since you don't have to come up with another index variable every time. And then the second piece of a for loop is this condition right here is what it's called, and that is what the loop tests every time it runs to see if it should run again. In this case I'm using 10. Previously in the last tutorial we saw the example of using the length of an array, which is also very useful. But this is just how you want to check if your loop is done, and how you should decide if you should keep running or not. The third part is this increment, and this is how much your index variable, in this case I, changes each time the loop runs. And this is a really important field because if you get this field wrong, it's very easy to have your loop never end or never stop, which is called an infinite loop. Because if you think about it, if your index variable is being tested to see if it's greater than something, and if you don't have that in there, say you just have I, then it's just going to, or if you don't have anything in there, then it's just going to continue to be 0 all the time, and 0 is always less than 10, so your loop will never stop running. And the fourth part of a for loop, which is pretty simple, is just the code that you want to run inside of that for loop. And this can be something that you want to change an array, or you want to test something in an array, or it can just be something simple like what I've got here, which is just loop run plus I. So now if we go ahead and run that, we get this as our output, which is loop run 0, loop run 1, all the way up to loop run 10. If you remember, our condition was I less than 10, loop run 9, because if you remember, our condition was I less than 10. So as soon as our I was 10, our loop condition was false and the loop stopped running. Now that's really all there is to it, but a great analogy for this is you reading a book. So if you were thinking of this loop as you sitting down and deciding to read a book, I would be the page number that you're currently on, that's your index variable, and then your condition, which is currently I less than 10, would be the number of pages that you're trying to get to, or the page that you're going to stop on. Let's say you're in class and the teacher says, read until you hit page 30 or something like that. Then that's the condition that you're checking every time. So every time you turn a page, you're going to check in the page number and see, is this page 30? And if it's not, you keep going. And then this I plus plus, that increment, is how many pages you're going to turn each time. A lot of times that makes sense for that to be 1, but if you're crazy or something, you might decide to turn 2 pages at a time, and then you could do, say, I plus equals 2 or some such, and then you could bounce by 2 pages each time. And then the code that it's evaluating is like you running you reading the page and understanding what's on it. It's the comprehension section. Hopefully that helps loops make a little bit more sense. They are kind of an abstract idea, so sometimes I find that analogies help out with that. Thank you for watching. This has been a screencast version of a tutorial I've got out on my blog, allcomputery.blogspot.com. Go ahead and take a look. There's some other great stuff out there.